Ghana, which is seen as a symbol of democracy in West Africa, is suddenly considering leaving. It's not like they are leaving a tiny cage, it is considering doing away with Ecowas completely. Yes, you heard correctly. Ghana is considering leaving, but this isn't just a single country making the decision. It might start a chain reaction of transformation. Everything could be different if Ghana, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger unite to form a new political group called the Alliance of Saharan States, (AES). West Africa hasn't had this level of upheaval in decades, and the effects were felt all the way from the southern tip of the continent to the Sahara. Let's be clear, Ecowas has changed over time. However, what actually took place? Let's investigate. Ghana is at a turning point. It has been an important part of Ecowas for many years. One of West Africa's most powerful voices. Promoting regional integration and Pan-Africanism has been greatly aided by Ghana's leadership. However, Ghana is now observing the warning signs, and the explanations are obvious. Ghana's national interests are no longer served by Ecowas, which was once a ray of hope for regional prosperity and unity. Let's start by talking about Ecowas' support for Western nations. Although Ecowas has long been viewed as a forum for African unification, in reality, it frequently serves Western interests. The idea that Ecowas is endorsing a double standard for democracy and good administration, which means that on the one side, it is harshly opposing unlawful transfers of government, such the military takeovers that have occurred twice in Mali, then in Guinea, and more recently, Burkina Faso, where the ruling class is actually rather complacent and uses constitutions to stay in power. And last year, this was observed in Guinea and Ivory Coast. This has grown more and more clear for Ghana, particularly given that Ecowas is too close to the US and France and still ignores the sovereignty and security issues facing the region. Then there's the financial aspect. Ghana's economy is expanding, and it has started to see that Ecowas hasn't delivered the economic growth it had promised. Ghana has been compelled to rely on trade agreements and foreign aid, neither of which are necessarily in its best interests. Even worse is the fact that these agreements frequently favor foreign powers over Ghanaians. Ghana is starting to question if it might succeed without the influence of Ecowas, as nations like Burkina Faso and Mali forge their own economic routes. Furthermore, Ghana has gained the courage to look into a different political future as a result of its expanding ties with AES nations like Burkina Faso, which are more dedicated to independence. AES is more concerned about Africa's independence and is not dependent on Western powers. Furthermore, that vision is more in line with Ghana's present objectives. It concerns African unification, national sovereignty, and most importantly economic autonomy from the West. Ghana sees the possibility of a more autonomous future free from Ecowas dependence. However, what about Ecowas? If it's not just Ghana that's leaving, Ecowas is beginning to show signs of cracking. But what will happen if those fractures become more serious? Ecowas may be in danger of being extinct if Ghana, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger depart. The question is not just whether Ecowas can endure, but also if it is worthy of doing so. The most powerful members of Ecowas, which greatly contribute to its military and political might, would be lost if important countries like Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger left. Not only is Ecowas a weaker organization without these countries, but it also loses its significance. After discussing how Ecowas failed in Ghana, let's speak about how it failed throughout Africa. Ecowas was established with ambitious economic objectives, including the construction of a currency union, a common market, and the harmonization of regional economic policy. The bloc's future was meant to be based on these same foundations. However, in practice, Ecowas has made very little progress in these areas, and Ghana is not the only country where this has occurred. Despite its lofty aim for economic unification, the long-promised West African Monetary Union has yet to come to fruition. A major obstacle has always been Africa's economic independence. Instead of making decisive moves toward independence, Ecowas became embroiled in economic deals that favored foreign powers over its own citizens. West Africa's reliance on former colonial powers, especially France, has been sustained by the system that Ecowas has been unable to abandon. Many West African nations' economies are still bound by colonial-era financial systems as a result of France's control over the region's financial systems through the CFA franc, which is linked to the euro. The neo-colonial banking system has survived because Ecowas has done very little to confront these long-standing arrangements. Maloney escalated last week when she asserted that the only reason migrants were going to Europe from Africa was because France was using the CFA franc to take advantage of the continent's natural resources. Add your voice to the total liberation of Africa by leaving a comment in the comments section below. Do not forget to like and subscribe for more informative videos like this one. Let's proceed. West Africa's economic progress has been severely hampered by ECOWAS's inability to address the region's infrastructure deficiencies. Roads, energy, and telecommunications networks are in poor condition, and there is no unified regional development plan. The demand for genuine, observable economic improvement in West Africa has been consistently unmet by ECOWAS, despite efforts by the African Union and other regional organizations to promote more connected infrastructure. Most West African nations continue to face poverty, unemployment, and economic inequality as a result of the unfulfilled promises of trade and regional economic cooperation. Regional peace and security is another area in which ECOWAS has failed. At first, ECOWAS was praised for its involvement in peacekeeping missions, particularly in Sierra Leone and Liberia during the 1990s. In particular, the intervention in Sierra Leone appeared to portray ECOWAS as a highly promising peacekeeping organization. This early triumph, though, was fleeting and eclipsed by subsequent unsuccessful interventions. Although the ECOWAS monitoring group, the organization's peacekeeping force, participated in a number of regional crises, the political unrest in its member states frequently caused the military intervention approach to be fragmented and weak. In nations like Guinea, Ivory Coast, Mali, and Burkina Faso, ECOWAS has had difficulty efficiently overseeing and mediating peace processes. Conflict and instability have affected each of these nations to differing degrees in recent years, and ECOWAS has either proved ineffectual or too slow to take action. The way ECOWAS responded to the 2012 coup in Mali is one obvious example. Although ECOWAS denounced the overthrow of the elected government by the Malian military, it did not intervene quickly or forcefully. With the emergence of insurgencies establishing themselves in the country's north, the situation in Mali became unmanageable. ECOWAS's interventionist role was called into question when its attempts to mediate the situation failed, and the situation only began to normalize after the French military intervened. Both the military coups in Burkina Faso in 2022 and Guinea in 2020 had equally poor ECOWAS responses. Sanctions enforced by ECOWAS did not yield any consequences, and political changes in these nations are still ongoing. Instead of actually tackling the underlying reasons of instability in the area, ECOWAS has frequently been perceived as an organization more concerned with maintaining the status quo. The absence of political will and cooperation between member states is arguably one of ECOWAS's most glaring shortcomings. Although the bloc was intended to function as a political and economic union, it has continuously had trouble keeping its members united. Regional cooperation is frequently subordinated to national concerns, making it challenging for ECOWAS to implement policies that make sense. For instance, ECOWAS is frequently too dispersed to organize a coordinated response when the region faces significant security concerns, such as the escalating insurgencies in the Sahel. Instead of working together inside the ECOWAS framework, member states frequently go their own way and pursue bilateral security arrangements with outside powers like the US and France. The region's security challenges have been handled incoherently as a result of this lack of unity. The organization's poor leadership has been one of the primary issues. Due to its inability to prioritize regional collaboration and its inability to speak with a one voice in the international arena, Ecowas has found it difficult to compete with newer alternatives like the AES. We must now examine whether AES really the way of the future for West Africa, or if it is merely wishful thinking. Is it a substitute for Ecowas? Being on the African continent and seeing what is happening from east to west is a very historic moment, when people are obviously aware of who the enemy is regardless of the language they speak. Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso are providing us with the compass of what has to be done. These three nations participated in numerous African organizations and were members of Ecowas, and they failed to observe significant improvements in the nation, particularly in the area of security. Following what some have referred to as military takeovers, if you pay close attention, you can see that military leaders who took over the nation still consider the opinions of the populace. It is impossible to overlook the significant change in West African geopolitics brought about by the emergence of AES. The Sahel Alliance AES, which was founded by countries like Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, is appending the decades-old narrative of regional collaboration promoted by Ecowas. However, does it possess the durability and ability to overthrow Ecowas? Or will it continue to be simply another dream postponed due to firmly established political realities? AES is more than just a brand new political coalition. It's an audacious and groundbreaking effort to change how Africa engages with the world and itself. AES is blazing a trail that seeks to put Africa's interests first, in contrast to Ecowas, which has long been controlled by Western influence. The aim to challenge the historical legacies of colonialism, particularly the domination of Western powers that have long influenced the policies of regional organizations such as Ecowas, is at the core of AES's establishment. AES has been motivated by the idea of self-reliance since its founding. The AES leadership, their objective is to establish a regional bloc where African nations make all of the decisions without interference from former colonial powers, as stated by leaders such as Burkina Faso's captain Ibrahim Traoré. The foundation of this perspective is the conviction that Africa can handle its own issues, develop economic solutions, and safeguard its security interests independently of the West. It marks a departure from the long-standing reliance on outside assistance and intervention, a problem that has dogged African countries for many years. Perhaps the most interesting part of AES's vision is its economic goals. Although ECOWAS's main goal has been to bring West African countries closer together economically, its attempts have frequently failed. In contrast, AES is putting forth a new economic system. The core of the alliance's economic strategy is self-sufficiency. The goal of the AES nations is to establish a regional economic bloc that is dependent on their assets and capabilities. This entails forging strong regional supply chains, fostering trade networks among AES member nations, and formulating economic policies that give preference to domestic businesses over imports. The leaders of the African Economic Society, AES, have made it clear that they intend to avoid the Western-dominated banking systems and look for other trading partners that are more interested in a partnership that benefits both parties than one that takes advantage of Africa's resources. AES is already making progress in a number of areas, including its increasing control over resources. AES is starting to rethink how mineral resources are managed in nations like Burkina Faso and Mali, which have enormous mineral richness. AES is advocating for a system where resource extraction and revenue production continue to be under African sovereignty, as opposed to permitting multinational businesses to harvest resources without benefiting local communities. It is believed that achieving this economic independence is essential to AES's goal of changing the economic landscape of West Africa. Given the historical background of ECOWAS's economic policies, AES's autonomy over its own resources and economic choices is crucial. If AES is successful, if other African regions are searching for methods to escape the shackles of foreign economic supremacy, it might provide an alternate paradigm. AES is a novel approach to regional security that goes beyond economics. On the other hand, AES is approaching regional security with greater coherence and focus. On the front lines of the war against insurgencies have been nations like Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali, and they're searching for an alternative to depending on foreign military powers like France. In order to fight insurgency and instability in the area, AES is promoting a collective security strategy in which member governments work together. Instead of depending on outside interventions, which frequently fall short of addressing the underlying causes of instability, AES's security approach places an emphasis on local solutions, with nations taking the initiative to safeguard their borders and communities. AES's leadership, especially Traoré, has advocated for a more decentralized security strategy in which African countries shoulder more of the burden of crisis management and peacekeeping. AES aims to create a more robust and independent security framework that can meet the challenges of the 21st century by emphasizing regional cooperation and mutual defense. In sharp contrast to Ecowas' reliance on outside forces, it is dedicated to independence, regional autonomy, and African-led solutions. AES has the potential to replace Ecowas and serve as the impetus for a new era of African freedom and unity if it can effectively overcome its internal obstacles and demonstrate its value. However, what would happen if Ecowas resisted? Is there any chance that Ghana, Mali, and Burkina Faso will rejoin Ecowas if it has so severely damaged its reputation? And it's not looking good, let's face it. Not only a few irate members are a problem for Ecowas. It is currently dealing with a serious issue of legitimacy. It would be nearly impossible for Ecowas to regain these nations. Its whole structure would have to be drastically altered. It must first sever its connections with the West, particularly France. Ecowas must act in the best interests of its citizens and cease functioning as an intermediary. African solutions must take precedence over those supported by the West. Regional security is the first step in that process. But there are other problems besides security. Economic autonomy is equally important. Ecowas must hold promoting trade agreements that enrich multinational firms at the expense of Africa's poor. Is Ecowas capable of reform? Yes, but it's unclear if it has the backing and the will to do so. The prospect of reintegrating Ghana, Mali, and Burkina Faso appears unrealistic in the absence of those essential adjustments. Ecowas may cease to be a significant political and economic power in West Africa if it loses more members. When important countries withdraw, the region runs the risk of becoming fragmented and unstable. According to Ecowas, a divided West Africa, where countries follow their own agendas, may result in a fragmented political environment. Countries may start pursuing separate foreign policies in the absence of a common economic and political platform, which could lead to competing interests and diminished collective bargaining power. This might weaken attempts to address common issues like security and economic development, and increase the region's susceptibility to outside influence. Nevertheless, the demise of Ecowas also offers a chance for something greater, which is AES. Therefore, Ecowas's collapse exclusively affects Ecowas. As we wrap out the video, let's ask, with leaders that genuinely put the needs of the continent ahead of those of other countries, is Africa about to enter a new era? At a rate that is difficult to deny, Africa is undergoing a tremendous transition. This change is exemplified by leaders such as Burkina Faso's captain Ibrahim Traoré. Individuals who prioritize the welfare of Africa's citizens and the continent's sovereignty. As leaders who reject the outdated idea of depending on outside forces to guide the economy and politics, they are becoming the voices of a new age. Africa's future does not lie in adhering to the norms established by Western nations or former colonial powers. It's about establishing a separate course that puts the needs, resources, and solutions of the continent first. In order to achieve economic independence, security, and regional stability, these leaders are advocating for a future in which African nations take the lead from within. Africa will have a stronger and more powerful voice on the global scene thanks to this new generation of leaders. Africa isn't waiting for approval to rise anymore. It is building its own future independent of outside influences. There is a positive change taking place across the continent. Whether this momentum can continue and result in Africa's long-term prosperity is the current question. Do you believe that Africa is in for some nice things? Do brave actions guarantee a bright future? Are you hoping to see an Africa free from outside influence? Tell us what you think in the comments section below. We explore the rich history, culture, and the ongoing struggle for sovereignty in Africa. Join us in this important conversation by subscribing to our channel. By subscribing, you're not just staying informed, you're becoming part of a movement dedicated to reclaiming Africa's rightful place on the global stage. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. Let's work together to spread knowledge and inspire change. Thanks for watching.